2005 Cadillac Escalade EXT. So we're gonna dig into that this morning, see if we can't get the air pump working before we start throwing money at it to fix stuff. So this vehicle actually has this LQ9 6-liter. That's why I purchased it. It's all-wheel drive, 4L60E transmission, right around 100,000 miles. Take off this hose, this connector, and then we can put this up on the bench. So it looks like you push on this tab here, and that one comes out. And then this here, I think you just pull out on it. Maybe. Alright, hold on here before you break it. Yeah, so I think you just pull this out, this clip here, and that should pull out. There we go. Now I'll set this up on the bench. We're gonna pull these Torx heads out and take the pump right off the bracket. Set that out of the way. Now this is a factory unit because that's what it says it is. So it's never been changed. It does not work. I tried to bump it and spray a little WD-40 down through it, and nothing seems to turn it on. So at any rate, this is a solenoid that sits down in here. As you can see, it's just an on and off. I don't know if this is the limit switch or what exactly is, but it was full of dirt, full of rust, full of crap. So I got it all cleaned up here. I'm going to put it back underneath, turn the key on, and see if it cycles. So after digging into this a little bit more, I think I found the problem. If you can look down in there, see, this is just full of rust. The piston just seized right to the wall of the pump. So yeah, there's no fixing this one. Day 2. I'm gonna go ahead and get all this disassembled, get the brakes off, get the CV axles out, get the tie rods, the idler arm, the pitman arm, the shocks. We'll get this all disassembled, which there's a million videos on YouTube showing you how to do all that. So I'll get this all done and then I'll bring you back in. All right, let's take a look at something here. So here's my old pieces. The old tie rods here, inner and outer. take your new one, lay it up there, make sure it's the right part, make sure it's the same one. You know, the spline size here, where this goes into your knuckle, is it the right thread? Is it the right bolt? Is it going to be long enough once you measure this? Take a look at your old CV axle. Alright, the splines, spline length, the diameter, is it the same as your new one? Okay, and you got your hubs here. Here's your old one. Now I cut the ABS line off this already, but make sure that these are the same. Make sure all of your parts are the same, because what's going to happen is you're going to get ready to put it back together and nothing will fit. Now you've already ordered all these parts, you've already got them dirty and assembled. You probably got them from the jungle place or the Evil Bays or wherever you got it. So if they're not right, now you're going to have to send all that back. So double check your stuff before you get really into this. Probably should do it right as you're taking it apart, like I did here. And I'm verifying everything. Everything here looks real good. Alright, one thing I forgot to mention. When you take these tie rods off, leave them together. Don't loosen them here. Don't back this off. If you're going to replace them, replace the whole thing. When you get the old one off, get yourself some of this good 3M tape and a Sharpie and mark what side, at least mark one side. You know, if you got this one marked passenger side, obviously the other one's the driver's side. So mark it so that when you get to that point, you can get this one to the exact same measurement. Now look, you're still going to have to go get an alignment. Okay, but this will get you to the alignment shop without eating the tires off. So you just get them close, and then your alignment guy can get them supposed to be in the factory specs. Alright, let's get you in here. What I've done is I finished taking everything off, cleaned it all up, wiped off most of the grease and the dust and the dirt and the rust, and I gave it the old Craigslist rebuild with some rust stop paint just to protect this frame and the running gear and everything before I put it back together. That way, you know, you want to put some tape on your calipers and not, you know, you don't want to show everybody that it was a Craigslist rebuild. But get it all cleaned up, repaint everything, and then go to the other side, do the same thing. As you can see, I got it all back together, all brand new parts. Check out the other side. So we've got new hubs, new CV axles, new tie rods, new sway bar links, the new strut master shocks that replace the Magna Ride. I'll get you up under here in a second here and we'll take a look at everything underneath. So all we got left to do yet is we got to splice the resistor into this connector here, and I left the socket out so we can torque those down to spec. Alright, so we're up under here, so you can see cleaned up all the frame rail. So I bought this from a guy down in southern Florida. You know, had a good time talking to him. Talked for about 2 hours before I bought the vehicle. And you know, we talked about you know, growing up, working on cars, you know, how we like to use Shilton's manuals and use torque wrenches and, you know, do stuff right. And so I was fairly confident that this truck had been taken pretty good care of. Now I did change that diff fluid there. As you can see, I put the date on it. It wasn't dirty, it was pretty clean, so I'm assuming that he took care of it. New vehicle, you know, you want to change everything out. So, but it's pretty dry under here, pretty clean. What in the hell's that? Are you kidding me? Really, Bill? What was all that talk about torque wrenches and Shilton's manuals? I just can't believe it. You use the orange filter? Oh boy. I don't know, we might have an Escalade for sale soon. We'll move to the rear end here and get the rear shocks and springs in, and I'll bring you back when we get started on that. Alright, so we're back on it. So after I got all the suspension off, I noticed when I took the pitman arm off that the pitman arm shaft seal was leaking. So I went ahead and took the 3 frame bolts out of there to the 2 lines, the steering shaft, drop this on off. We'll go ahead and put a new seal kit in it. But what I wanted to show you is before you do anything, mark the shaft with a center punch, drill, whatever. So mark it here where your shaft goes on, mark it here because we have to take this piece off, mark it here, and then mark your pitman arm shaft where the flat is to the front of the steering box. Alright, so I'll get this apart and then we'll come back and I'll show you how you put the seals in. So I'm going to show you how to take this gearbox apart. I went already ahead, took out these 15mm bolts. Now I did mark it so I know that this goes back to this side of the box. Do not take this out. This is an adjustment. Leave it. Don't take it out. You don't need to take this off to get this plate off. Leave it on. Now take yourself one of these brass ass hammers. You got the bolts out, and we're just going to tap on the shaft. And you'll make a huge mess like that all over the floor. It's going to puke all that old fluid right on out for you. Alright, we'll set that to the side for now. But what we've got is the shaft tapped out. You see it has a rubber O-ring here. And then this is the wear surface here where the seals, the top and bottom seals will ride. So make sure you clean that up real good. Don't use sandpaper. If it's got a little crud on it, a little surface rust, wire brush it with a light, like a light wire brush, and just get it off. Don't go grinding on it. And then this is what you'll have. So this is the top seal. It sits down here. And once you get this top seal pulled out with your little hook thing here, you'll have to get a set of these mammoth bad boys here. Pull the snap ring out. Underneath that snap ring you'll find this spacer, washer, and then this plastic, I don't know, whatever it is, this is the bottom seal. So you got seal, plastic, washer, snap ring, seal. That's how it goes back in, just like that. So what you want to do is find yourself a socket that just fits over that to drive all the new stuff in. So I bought a kit here. This happens to be a O'Reilly's brand, Precision 7071. And it comes with all these new pieces. So while you're working on this, lay it all out in order. Just like it came out. That way when you go back in, you're not putting something upside down or wrong spacing, what have you. So we'll go ahead and get that all back in there, and then we'll put the shaft back in and see what happens. Now, I'm going to use Type 3 ATF to lubricate everything, and when I refill the power steering fluid pump, I'm putting this back in. Alright, so one thing I forgot to mention earlier, so you can see now we have all the new seals, snap ring, spacer, everything back down in there. It's all tapped back down, lubed it up with some ATF. Now this, when you take it off, is your dust shield. Now this one's a little chewed up from where I got the pitman arm puller on it, but that's not really the big issue here. This surface here slides down in this bore. Put your shaft back through, you put your pitman arm back on, and then when you have everything set, you take a screwdriver and you pull this back up so it covers your threads or your splines here, and it keeps the dust and crap out of there from getting up in there and eating your seal out. So don't throw this piece away, and don't leave it pushed all the way against, showing those splines once you get it back on the vehicle. Pull it back down to cover up those splines. That'll keep all the nasty crap out of there. So what I plan to do is put a little grease along this and then put it back in. When I get everything back assembled, then I'll pull it down right on top of the pitman arm, and it'll keep all the crap out. So don't throw these things out. I tried to buy a new one at the parts store, and they're like, well, no, we have to special order it and blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, this one's just a little chewed up, it'll be fine. So very important on your pitman arm. All right, so what you have to do on the rear here is for disassembly is take off your level sensor from the A-arm. Obviously take the old shock out. Disconnect your ABS line from the connector on the frame. Take this hanger off here that holds your brake line. Take your sway bar link off, and then that'll allow you to do. Now see, I've got a jack up under the rear end here, but now when I drop that jack, now I should be able to take that coil spring right out, because we have to replace them with the ones that came with the kit. So before you take these springs off, mark on the bottom, and get you in there a little bit, mark on the bottom here where the end of that coil spring is. Mark it on the axle, so when you go to put your new ones in, you know what somewhat where the clocking is going to be for your new one. Otherwise you'll get your ride height all messed up. Now I've gone ahead and disassembled both sides, so this will drop all out. I'll bring you back when we got the springs out, and we'll start assembling the new springs with the airbags. I got the new springs, the airbags installed, and got the lines on, which we'll push up through the top of the frame rails. We'll get these put on. Also got a real filter, take that orange one off there. I still can't believe that, but you know, it is what it is. We got the new springs with the airbags ran. Got the new shocks in. Got everything reconnected. Get your level sensor and ABS sensor, your brake line holder back in. Get everything back where it's supposed to be. Don't worry about these bags here. If they look a little off, put the weight on it. They'll find their home. All we got left to do is then run our air hose to our Schrader valve. So this one I'm going to put on a T, so when you fill it up, it equally distributes air to both sides. I don't need to, you know, offset it or what have you. So, but you know, just make sure everything's buttoned up. You know, throw a little paint on there. I threw a little paint on this one. So I'll figure out where I'm going to put the Schrader valve, drill a hole, get it mounted, and I'll bring you back when I get that done. I got the resistors wired in to the MagnaRide front wiring harness, and as you can see, you don't see it hanging down here anywhere. That's because I put it up here. I put it right there. You can see it down there. Alright, so you got to get those up and out of the weather. If they get water, salt, stuff in them, they'll just stop working. And in the back here, I got everything installed. Airbag, I got the airbag lines ran. I got the resistors for the rear air shocks. The sensor wire, I got those wired in and up on top of the frame rail, out of the way so they won't get nasty or wet or any kind of corrosion on them. And then you can see here I put the air Schrader valve for the airbags all the way around. So on those airbags, to get them to settle right, spray them down with a little WD-40 and when you set this on the ground, it'll adjust itself inside those springs. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get her set on the ground and put the tires back on, get it set on the ground, and then we're going to adjust the front ride height. We're going to do that by taking a tape measure, measuring up to the fender wells, and then adjusting on the torsion arm bolts until we get both sides the same. Got it back on the ground, got the wheels on, everything's good. I did have to crank up on the torsion arm bolts, raise the front about an inch both sides, but got it leveled out. Now after I get it aligned, I may have to readjust a little bit, but it looks pretty good. I think I like the stance pretty well. I'll back up here and look. Looks pretty good. No check engine lights, or rather no SES lights on from the from putting the resistors onto the system. Took it for a little spin. Now you'll notice that there's no headlights in this, no grill. So I have a brand new set of headlights over there. You'll see them over there. But I have to take the ballast out of the old ones and put into these new ones. But I think I'm going to make that a separate video. Alright, so I'm going to show you how I gap my spark plugs. So what I have here is a set of thread measuring wires. I think I got these at Hobo Freight. Inside of it here you'll find all different diameters of wire. So for the 2005 Cadillac Escalade, GM says 40 thousandths. This is a 40 thousandths wire, and we'll verify that. And she's dead on 40 thousandths. So you take your plug. None of these are going to be probably what your spec is. I don't know what they default set these at. Maybe 45 thousandths, 50. I don't know. But it's important to set that gap, because essentially this is why you're doing a tune-up anyways, because the gap here gets too wide as this plug wears. And it, you know, other things could be, you know, the resistance of it, or, you know, depending on how your engine runs. But it's important to set the initial gap to what the manufacturer says that engine takes. So what I do is I take this wire and I just make it to where it just passes through. Now, I don't like those round spark plug gaps that you shove into thin and then you turn it and it's supposed to gap it out. To me, that you're damaging the tip, or you're bending the strap. I think in my opinion, I think you're really kind of adding premature wear to the plug when you use those. So when you get it, just if the gap is not big enough, you know, just grab the strap and bend out a little bit, or bend in a little bit, and then run your wire through it until it just clicks through. So you just get that gap just right. So as you see here, I already took these two bolts out, this bolt and that bolt, and now I pop this clip off. Oh, the coil comes right out. So it's pretty easy to do. These are 10mm bolts. So I'll go ahead and get the rest of these three out. And then I think down here for the #1 cylinder, I'm going to maybe take this bracket off right here that holds the battery cable, so I can move it out of the way. Otherwise, I think if you can look down in there, it could probably be a little bit of a bear to get at that #1 plug. Let me get after this. I'll get it done, and then I'll bring you back when we start installing the new coils, plug wires, and plugs on the passenger side. I'll show you something here. See how the plugs are in? I threaded them on all by hand. But if you look at them, I don't know if you can really see it or not. You see how they're all angling the same way, same height. So from the front one, second one, third one, that's the way they should be. So if you are hand threading these spark plugs back in, and you have two that look on the same plane, and then you have one that's pointing up towards the roof of the truck or the hood of the truck, or one that's pointing down towards the ground, but you've got it turned in a turn or two, you might want to take it back out because you don't have it started straight. Run these spark plugs in by hand. Don't put a wrench on them immediately, or try put the spark plug in the end of the socket and go shoving it in unless you can absolutely see 100% where your threads are. I'll bring you over on the other side. And as you can see here, we got all the coils and wires and everything back on. Now, one thing I was going to mention earlier with these coils, the two bolts that hold them in, let's see here. All right, so you have that bolt and this bolt. This bottom bolt here is the short bolt. The top one is the long bolt. It's done that way because the bracket is at an angle on the valve cover. So put the short one back in the bottom and the long one back in the top. Also, when you're installing these wires on the coil, you'll hear an audible click when you get it all the way pushed in. Same thing when you're putting the other end down there on the spark plug. If you don't hear that audible click, then your spark plug wire is not all the way on the spark plug. With your spark plugs, once the spark plug bottoms out, you can't turn it anymore by hand, or you put the wrench on it and it tightens up and it stops. That's seated. Talk about these spark plug wires again. I'm going to demonstrate how they click when you get them all the way seated. And earlier I said take the spark plugs all the way down and then give them a quarter turn. Well, that might be a little wrong. That maybe an 1/8 of a turn. Yeah, disregard the quarter. I don't think you'll get a quarter turn past all the way seated. Just give it a good snug. I'm sure there's a torque spec on it, but I'm not digging out a torque wrench for it. But maybe an 1/8 of a turn past fully seated, and you're probably tight enough. So here, I'm going to plug this in and listen. You'll hear the audible click when I get this coil wire on. There it is. You hear it? Clicked. Now you get the other end down here on the spark plug. And that one, I don't know, you can feel it and hear it. Maybe not as audible as it is, you can feel it. Try one more here. And you can see the spark plug down there. Alright, there you go. That's all the way seated. And then turn them, make them pretty. Turn them all so they hang the same way. And that's it. That's all all 8 coils, plugs, and wires. Now I got to get a new piece of vacuum line for this missing piece here. And I'll clean up the tools, and then we'll do a cold start, see what she sounds like. I'll bring you back. It actually sounds better than it did before. Oh yeah. I guess the proof will be in your seat of your pants when we take it for a spin here, but you know, with 8 loose spark plugs, I gotta say that with, you know, bringing the compression back around on it by tightening them up, this thing's got to run a lot better. So far, you know, she's idling really smooth. Before I had, you know, it sounded like kind of a hesitation when you'd start it up and a little bit of shakiness, but I'm telling you, it's smooth as glass now. Let's go out and look at the engine. Good. The Escalade's up on jack stands, and you know, go ahead and guess why. All right, I'll show you why. That's why. Transmission went out, 3rd and 4th gear. So we're gonna replace it. Okay, so we got the transfer case out. You'll see here all these bolts here. You have nuts on them. That's the ones you got to take off to get that off there. This particular vehicle, you have to take the transfer case off. You can't drop them both at the same time unless you want to drop the torque arm bracket, which that'd be a nightmare. So remember that there's a gasket that goes on here. So if you're replacing it or taking it off, make sure you put a new gasket on. We got the transmission out, and while we're at it, we went ahead and replaced the rear main seal
and
housing, and now we're just putting it back together. Put the flex plate back on and torque that. While you have it out, check your rear main seal. Or the rebuilt transmission in. Got the exhaust back on both sides. You got to put the transfer case back on, and the cross member and the drive shafts, and this one's pretty much buttoned up. Okay, we're going to go rear to front here, and I'll tell you what you need to take this truck apart. To take the transmission out, you need 11mm to get those U-joints off the drive shaft. Moving forward, 15mm to get the front, mounts from the back of the transmission to the transfer case. That's 15mm. So you'll need some deep wall, shallow, and a box end wrench to get those off. You look here, this cross member, the rear cross member, that's 21mm. So you need a 21mm socket and a 21mm wrench to hold the other side. On the transfer case, there's a plug on the very top. That's the vehicle speed sensor. On the front driver's side of the transfer case, there's a breather hose that has to come off as well. Moving forward here, you'll need to take your exhaust off, both sides, up on the manifolds. And I'll get up in here, I'll show you a little bit better. So right here, all the way around, 15mm deep wall. Those will come off. Unplug your O2 sensor wiring harness. They'd be plugging into that connector there. And I really can't see the one over on the other side, but there'd be another one on the frame rail up there. So that's exhaust, transfer case, cross member. Around the bell housing here, these are 15mm, so there's going to be 1, 2, 3 on the passenger side, one in the very top of the motor, at the very top, very back of the motor, and then you'll have 3 more on the driver's side. A combination of extensions, deep wall, shallow wall, ratchets, will get all those off. Your starter bolts are here. So you have to take the wires off the back. You have to take the wires off the back of the starter, and then here and here, these are, I believe they're 15 as well. Take those two off. Drop the starter out of the way, because you're gonna have to get the flex plate bolts out, and those are also a 15, but that's after you take the starter off. Take this little plastic plate off with a 10mm screw right here. Take that off. This plate will come over. Somebody gonna have to roll the motor over. Take your battery off. Take the ground off your battery. Spin the motor over by the crank bolt until you get the 15mm bolt into the window here. Then take it off, and then spin it and take the next one off, and spin it, take the next one off. When you put these back together, take a marker. Once you've got them all tightened up, snugged up, don't torque them yet. When you go around to torque them, the spec, take a marker, wipe across the bolt, and turn it to the next one, torque it, take the marker, go across the bolt. That way you know you've got them all torqued. There's only 3.